Welcome to Page One, the show for writers with the reader in mind. Here's your host, Zita Christian.
Hi everyone, welcome to Page One. I'm Zita Christian. Tonight I have two guests. One of them is a law enforcement officer for over 20 years. The other is a 6th grade English teacher who is also a published author. And together they have written a workbook about internet safety. This book is for children and for parents. Now this book is not yet finished, but the subject is so important, I wanted to have them on the show now to talk about it, and we'll have them back later when the book is out. So join me in welcoming first Scott Driscoll. Scott, thanks very much for being on the show tonight.
My pleasure.
And Laurie, thank you very, very much for being on the show and for arranging to have Scott join us. I know several people might know you also as a crew member on Page One and Full Bloom, and they might have seen you here on the show as a guest to talk about the Charter Oak Romance Writers and also to talk about your own book, Finding Atticus, which is being used as a curriculum in the 6th grade. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. I am so pleased that you're both here. And I mention all of that to show that you have interesting credentials. And I love the way that they have combined, Laurie, your work in the classroom, and Scott, your work for more than 20 years in law enforcement. So, Scott, let me start with you here. How did you meet Laurie? I mean, I've known Laurie for a couple of decades, but how did you meet her?
Through the school that Laurie works at, I teach the drug education program, and met her a couple times, and we just became friends at that point. And we have a pretty good relationship. We kind of zing each other every once in a while, but we've become friends over the years. Yeah. And I've always had a lot of respect for what she does and the relationship that she has with the kids, and how she has a rapport with the kids. Always had my respect.
She does. Now, Laurie, if I remember correctly, when Scott was teaching we're talking about the DARE program, is that correct?
Correct.
What was it that you did to enhance the student learning about that DARE program?
Well, I felt like there were things that they were doing in the science classroom with DARE that could be complemented by activities in the English classroom, particularly theater activities that would be an extension of what they were doing in the DARE program, the lessons that they were trying to teach. So as part of my master's program, I created a curriculum that could go with the original DARE program. It has changed a little bit since then.
And is that then what gave you the idea to do some kind of extra program when it came to internet safety? Is that a good correlation?
Actually, this is Scott's baby, and I kind of jumped on board with Scott. This was his idea.
All right, so Scott, let me ask you, how did all this start? What gave you the idea to teach this course on internet safety, not just for children, but for adults as well?
Well, I was lucky enough in my law enforcement career to be assigned to a couple task force. Mm-hmm. And through those task force, had some great investigations where we were going after the predators, people that were going after our children. And one thing that I realized that was missing was the education aspect. So I started to put together presentations to educate not just kids, but parents. And had this book in mind for a long time that it could be a resource for parents, it could be a resource for the education systems to teach kids about this important topic. Mm-hmm. So I found out about Finding Atticus and talked to Laurie, and it was a great fit. And we just started working together, and it's been a great combination ever since.
Yeah, I imagine, Laurie, because you and I have known each other for a long time through the Romance Writers, that you get a number of people coming up to you and saying, I've got this great idea for a book. And oftentimes a person does have a wonderful idea, but part of the joy of seeing a finished project is doing the work yourself. So my guess is there have been a number of times that you, like me, have encouraged the person to, where to find a resource to tackle the project. What made you, in this case, say, this sounds interesting, I do want to be involved with this?
Well, at first, I said to Scott, I have to think about this, because when you're collaborating, that's a whole different situation than when you're writing it alone.
Yes,
as you know. And we have known each other a long time in the classroom, on the basketball court. We won't go there. But I knew that Scott also has great integrity, and it was just a matter of, this is a book, it's a little different than talking in front of the kids, could we do it together? And so we sat down a few times, talked about what the concept was that he had, so that I could see if I could wrap myself around it, because he's very inspired by that, and so am I, because I like to keep the students safe. But just I needed to be able to buy into his idea, and I liked his idea. So then we decided on format after that, and it took us a little while, but once it clicked.
Well, I want to stop you for a minute and go back. In fact, Scott, let me ask you, since this was your idea,
Okay.
What was your initial idea for the format of this book?
My initial idea was just to come up with some fictional vignettes, shall we call them, that are based on real life situations that I've seen kids go through. And that's what started the whole process. And Lori really wrapped herself around that, and then we kind of grasped it into not just what you can learn from that one thing. We added educational elements to it, that there's going to be quizzes or challenges that the families can do together. And it kind of just snowballed from there. But my original thought was just fictional stories based on real life situations where we could kind of almost recap what could have went wrong, or the safety things we can learn from it. And Lori just took it to the next level, and it's been a great process ever since.
All right, Laurie, what's the next level? What happened from the idea of the fictional stories?
I took Scott's vignette idea, and the first one I wrote, because we were still trying to work this out, it was kind of interesting, because he told me what he was looking for this one chapter. So I said, okay, I can do that. And I went home and I wrote it over the course of a few days, and I thought, okay, I think I've done what he wants. So I sent it off to him, and he was very kind when he wrote back, and he said, yeah, no, this wasn't exactly what I was looking for. So he said, I really thought it was going to be longer. And here I was afraid I was doing too much. And I said, oh, you want longer? No problem. And so the next time I sent it to him, he said, okay, bingo, that's what I had in mind.
And this piece that you're talking about, that's the narrative story, like
right.
the fictional piece?
Right. But then I came back to him after I wrote that, and I said, okay, the teacher in me is kicking in now. And I knew what part he was going to be playing with his section of it. And I said, I feel like we need a little section where the parents and the kids have to stop and think about what they've read. And whether it's that they do a little puzzle or they have to answer questions, something where they can work interactively to go back at what they've read and think about it and decide how it fits into what they maybe are doing or what they've learned.
All right, Len, I want to switch gears here just for a minute to put some of this shaping of the book into context. Scott, tell me, based on your experience in this whole world of internet safety, what are some of these dangers that children are facing?
Well, when it comes to internet dangers, it depends on the age group of the kid, too. There's different concerns for each age group. You take a middle school kid who's just starting to get into Facebook and sharing personal information. They're opening up their doors and their lives to strangers. The high school kids are doing things that could come back to haunt them with education, colleges, employment.
Oh.
They're not thinking that there's permanent records of what they're doing, and when someone posts something on the internet, it stays permanent. So there's different levels of safety depending on the age group of the child. I'm starting to see elementary school kids with social networking sites like Facebook and MySpace. They're way too young. That is where strangers are communicating with our kids. As the kids get older, they get a little more brave with what they share on there and some of the pictures they're sharing or videos they're posting. Employers and colleges and scholarship boards are going to be able to look at that sooner or later, and it's going to weigh their decisions.
All right, so on one hand, you've got little kids who are vulnerable because they're ignorant of this world,
Yep.
the world of the internet. And then you get the kids who are brave, foolishly brave, maybe. And then you've got kids who are just simply not thinking that there are long-term consequences.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of not thinking, and not that the kids are not smart, because they are. They're just not thinking there's long-term consequences. And as a kid, do we really think about long-term consequences? I know I didn't when I was a kid, but there's also not a permanent record of everything I did when I was a kid, where if you put it on the internet now, it's permanent.
All right, there's a difference here, though. On one hand, something like that, something like the student, the high school junior or senior who's writing about being wasted over the weekend, it's showing just stupidity. Mm-hmm. But that's not danger. Talk to me about what's dangerous.
Well, what's dangerous is when people set up Facebook or MySpace or any social networking site and they think they set it to private and it's not set properly and anybody can view their personal stuff. When someone opens up a social networking site, they're sharing their birthday, they're sharing their real name, they're sharing schools they go to. Anything that a predator or a complete stranger can just look at and say, I know where that person is from 7 to 3 every day. And I can start to form a relationship if I add them as a friend and build up a friendship with them.
But, all right, now I'm a little ignorant about
Okay.
this. I only got on Facebook about 3 months ago, so this is still kind of new to me. But just because somebody asks to be your friend, is there an obligation to say yes? So why would somebody... Why would somebody say yes to somebody you don't know?
That's a great question, and that's something that I think the teenagers have to answer to us, because I mean, the kids I talk to have 1,000 friends on their Facebook, it doesn't even faze them, and they are inviting complete strangers into the world. Just, I'm not sure if it's because they think it's cool or they don't want to hurt people's feelings by saying no, but there are people out there that are inviting strangers into their world.
So I want you to go a little further with this.
Okay.
So let's say you've got a young person with a Facebook page, and that person has said, here's my birthday, and I'm in such and such school, and both my parents work. So in the afternoon when I come home and I'm by myself, I watch movies, or I'm making these cool cookies, or whatever it is. So that sends a message out. Here's so and so, age whatever town, school, living at home alone for several hours.
Yes. They're sharing that much information. There are kids now putting on social networking their cell phone numbers, saying if I'm not online, text me. And that's just sharing way too much personal information with everybody.
Even though the child might think that this information is private, that's not necessarily the case.
And anytime someone sets up their social networking site to private, which is one of the settings you can have, it doesn't guarantee 100% privacy. They think once they set it to private, the only people that can see it are their friends, and it's not true. There's ways around that. It's safer, but it's not 100% safe.
Okay. So, Laurie, I want to go to you for a minute here. Now, I know when you were writing Finding Atticus, part of your initial motivation was you knew the students needed something. They needed a story that had an uplifting ending, something that was relevant to them. So you saw a need and you fulfilled it through this fictional story. Did you have any experiences, I'm not asking you to name names or anything, but stories that you know of students, either your own students or students of other teachers where internet safety has been...
Oh, absolutely. There have been several things, even at our 6th grade level, that have shocked me that 6th graders are doing. But as Scott said, the thing is, they don't think about the long-term consequences of what they're choosing to do. They're thinking about the moment. This will be funny. This will be fun. This will make me cool or popular. And that's how a lot of middle school kids think. I did when I was that age. I didn't have internet. It wasn't that long ago, but I didn't have internet. But that's the kind of things that they're doing now between cell phones and the internet. They're putting a lot of things out there that are not good. And yes, I hear about them through things that happen at school.
So you've got kids giving out personal information. You've got predators out there. They're using the personal information to get in touch with the kids. Now, are we really talking like the kind of stories you see on television, on crime shows, where you've got some predator showing up at some kid's house? Or
It absolutely can happen. One of the things that I've also done is undercover investigations where I've gone online as a kid, and if they go to the wrong place at the wrong time, that situation could definitely happen.
You've been undercover as posing as a child?
Yes.
So how do you do that?
Very carefully, with a lot of patience. A lot of studying. I put a lot of studying into how to be a kid online. I've learned a lot from the kids that I've taught, either through the DARE program or just from my kids' friends. I just studied being a kid.
It's a whole different language.
A whole different world.
Yeah.
It is a whole different world.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and the one thing I was going to say is I think we're missing one group that needs this education, and that's the parents.
I was just going to ask you about that. Because how can you try to help students, young people, for something like this that is essentially in their home, if the parents aren't involved?
Every student that I talk to, they think they know more about the internet than their parents, and they're probably right in a lot of situations. The kids are probably the administrators to the computers. When a parent has a problem, they call their kids in the room saying, fix this. We need to change that. We don't have to become Bill Gates. We don't have to become computer experts, but parents need to at least familiarize themselves and heighten their awareness on safety.
And how are they going to do that? What is there something in this book that will help?
Absolutely. Every chapter on this book will deal with one segment of the internet that a parent and a child will face.
All right, I want you to give me an example. Tell me a story from the book and show me how this plays out.
Can I start with Lindsay?
Sure, go right ahead.
When we first started out with this, I was pretty naive. I've learned a lot since we started writing this book. I say this with all kindness, but Scott is very creepy. He can really be a creeper, but it's because of his experience and what he's learned doing the internet.
I don't take that as an insult for some reason. I'm not sure why, but okay.
But the first vignette that he wanted to write was about a chat room, a young teenager going into a chat room, this girl. And so as I was writing that, I had to, first of all, get into her frame of mind, what kinds of things she'd be thinking about. What was scary was Scott was even better at that, figuring out what she'd be thinking about, and he'd come back with a revision. I'd say, you are spot on with that.
Like what? But give me some examples.
The things that they talk about, the things that they think about. Now, I hear it all the time at school. I'm pretty tuned into the kids. As a writer, I listen to how they talk, what they talk about. I know that that's a great place to get information. But, for example, I was kind of shocked when I found out that that a 12 or 13-year-old would start conversations with somebody they don't know that are, I don't know if racy is the right word, but it was alarming to me. Some of the things that he said that kids will say online, and I had to write that.
Racy, sexually racy.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, suggestive.
Okay.
There's the word I wanted, suggestive. Very suggestive. And a lot of that comes from the media to begin with. The movies they're watching, the TV programs they're watching. So now they get onto the internet, and because of the anonymity that Scott talks about, they can go on and be something they're not, someone who is sexier, who's more experienced, so they think. But so then as I was writing that and I was sending it off to Scott, he had to do his, what I call the creeper part, where he had to imagine he was the predator responding in this chat room. And it was very eye-opening for me as an educator with all this experience and all this time with students and with kids of my own to see what kinds of things he's dealt with internet, well, not safety, but internet investigations, yeah.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
Yes. So you have a vignette like this in the story, and then there's a section, from what I understand, where you kind of dissect the scenario.
What I do is, that's where I take over, and what I'll do is whatever Lori comes up with, I will dissect is a great word. I'll take apart the chapter and point out where things went wrong, where things could have went wrong, and what needs to be done to make sure that doesn't happen again.
So something like, here at this point, you gave away information about where you were going to be at a certain time. You gave away your cell phone number. You gave away
That's
something
exactly
like that.
what I do with Lindsay's. I pretty much copied the exact sentence that Lori would write, and I would say, in this sentence alone, here are the 4 things that went wrong and why they were wrong.
And the personal information that she gave. I love his analogy to the predator putting a puzzle together, because I could see it so well in that chapter as we were starting it, how someone could just gather more and more information just by innocent things that the girl would say. She'd talk about her friends and name her friends. She'd name her activities and when she does them. And I'd sit there and say, wow, she is giving out a lot of information. And he, as the supposed predator, was pulling it all out of her. So it was very eye-opening.
So then there's a section for parents, correct?
It's
With
a
the
combined
story.
section. What we did on Lindsay, I think, was some fill-in-the-blank questions, and we challenged the parents and the kids to read it, and then parents take a test, the quiz, children take the quiz, and then compare the answers. Because one thing about this safety is the parents can learn a lot from the kids on what's going on out there. And sometimes we don't want to learn from kids. We have our egos. We think our kids are just being pain sometimes. When it comes to the technology, we can learn a lot. So our challenge is do this together and then you can both share your concerns. If a kid might think one rule is being way too strict, the parent who answered the same question could say, well, this is why I think it's so strict, and they can communicate about this, because they have to communicate about this technology and safety. It's their biggest link to keeping the kids safe. Parents need to know what the kids are doing.
This is just frightening. It is when you think about what the consequences could be. I want to, I'll be talking with you later on our sister show, Full Bloom, where we're going to talk in more depth about the internet safety issues. But this is page 1. This is about writing. So I do want to ask a little more about this collaboration and how I can't say handled because the book is not yet finished. So what kind of time frame have you been working with? And did one of you have a goal? Yes.
Scott wants it now.
Patience is not I'm not a real patient person, but Lori warned me ahead of time with the book writing process that I have to learn patience, and I'm learning. I'm trying.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you. I think I probably, well, as soon as possible is my goal, but I think you have a different.
Well, we have to go back and forth. We've done multiple revisions just on the 9 chapters that we've done so far, because sometimes I'll write things that aren't accurate, and Scott will send it back to me and say, they wouldn't say that way, or they wouldn't react that way. So then I have to go back and fix it. And thank goodness he tells me what to write. I just have to put the words down and make it sound good. But that's where the collaboration comes in, because we really go back and forth a lot. I'm trying to get him on my same phone system so that my text messaging doesn't go off the roof.
Sure. Well, a very basic question. I realize this book is not finished yet, and it's one of the reasons I want to be sure to let you know this book is not finished yet. It's not like something that you can go out and buy, but that day will come, and they may change the title when that comes. But right now, what's your working title?
Go ahead.
Sorry.
It's www, the information superhighway, and then the question is, the subtitle is, are you up to speed?
Oh.
But see, the are you up to speed is actually going to be in the text form that the kids will be able to read, and parents might not even be able to read.
Oh, so it's the letter R, the letter U.
Up, the number 2, speed.
Oh, okay.
And I did know the title, by the way.
Well, and I have to tell you, I hear the kids talking about it, and I see some of the way the text messages are, and I think it's so cool. And I think, oh yeah, well, back in the '60s when I was taking shorthand, those are just brief forms. I mean, this has been around for a long time, and I'm sure even before that in some other form. So in a way, it's nice to see it all coming back, and it is pretty easy to decode if you've taken shorthand. What are your hopes, in addition to just the creative process of collaborating on a book? That's sort of a new and exciting thing. I know, Laurie, for you, it's a whole new exercise to collaborate with someone when you're used to writing on your own. And Scott, I'm guessing, is just the whole process of writing a book. That in itself is something new. But what do each of you want from this?
I want families to be educated. I've been to some of Scott's internet safety programs that he gives for the students, and it is amazing what we aren't aware of and what he's teaching the kids. And I want them to have this book as a communication tool, as he said before, an opportunity for them to talk together and start to understand where each side is coming from, because I think that will help the kids be safer. If they understand that the parents aren't out to dictate, but they want to understand. And we know that the internet is here to stay. It's not going away, but it seems like every time we turn around, someone has found a new way to make it dangerous. And so if we can educate them, I'll be happy. Keep them safe.
You bring up a good point. I mean, the internet has been around now for just past, the 40th birthday?
Yep.
So, it's not going away. So, that said, Scott, what do you hope to gain from this whole process?
For me, if we can prevent one more kid from becoming a victim, it's been worth it.
I want to get specific here for a minute. When you say of becoming a victim, in what ways are children becoming victims?
Well, they're becoming victims of predators and pedophiles, but they're also becoming victims of their own things, where kids are losing scholarships because of things they're doing on Facebook. There's just a report the other day that someone lost their homeowner's insurance because of what their kid was doing on Facebook.
What?
Yeah, a homeowner's insurance company saw someone on Facebook doing some stunts on the house. They eliminated their homeowner's insurance.
Oh my gosh.
If, for me, with my experience and talking to people who are victims of these predators and being in that world as an undercover kid, if this book heightens some parents' awareness to help keep their kids safe, that's my goal.
What do you think is going to be the greatest resistance that you're going to receive from this, from the book? Not so much from, well, no, let me rephrase this. Are you getting any resistance now from either students or parents when you do your programs on internet safety?
There's no resistance. There's certain times where kids will want to challenge me. Maybe challenge isn't the right word. They will think they know more about the internet than me. Once they see my credentials and we talk a little bit, they realize I'm not there to lecture them. I'm just there to point out things that I've learned. And once they see that, we usually have a very good give and take when I talk to them. The parents sometimes want to leave and smash their computers because they didn't really know what they were getting into.
Wow.
And they didn't know what their kids were involved in. So there hasn't been any resistance. It's just a lot of questions afterwards saying, how do you prevent these things from happening?
And a lot of parents who have said to Scott, we need that book.
Yes.
Which has been nice because it's affirmation that we're on the right track.
Parents and education systems and people on several school boards and stuff like that have shown an interest and want to be kept in the loop on what we're doing.
So what's your time frame? Because you know people are going to be watching and going, okay, I know the book's not ready now, but when will it be ready?
I would guess by midsummer we'll be done writing it at the latest.
The latest.
Yeah.
Okay. And then are you submitting it to traditional publishers? Might you look at a POD option in order to get the book out fast?
We've talked about both options. We have a lot of letters out there right now, query letters to publishers and agents. But we have talked about the whole POD possibility.
Print on demand for the
Right.
people who are not aware of it. Well, I'll tell you something to both of you. I'm fascinated by the topic, and I know it is much needed. I love the idea that you're doing a workbook that is not only for children but for parents as well. And I'm going to assume that you will come back on the show when you do have the book and we can show that and talk even more about it. So Scott Driscoll and Laurie Adams, thank you both very much for being on the show tonight. And for you in the viewing audience, let me just remind you for page 1 that there have been civilizations that did not use the wheel. There have been no civilizations that did not tell stories. So find your story and find a way to tell it. And do join us again next time. Thank you.
Food for the crew and guests was provided by Manchester Grill of Manchester, Connecticut, and Angelo's Restaurant of Glastonbury, Connecticut. Be sure to send your writing questions and your comments on the book club selection to Zita at page 1, P.O. Box 1515, Manchester, Connecticut, 06045-1515, or send an email to Zita at page1tv.com.